It's the Zodiac speaking. It's not. I'm just kidding. Hi, welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast. From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. And it really is Just the Tip-Sters. And I am your host, Melissa Morgan. And my beautiful and talented co-host today is Joshua Bevan. Say hello.
Good morning.
You're not the Zodiac either.
No. But I do like how you cracked yourself up before you actually spoke.
Yeah, I almost couldn't get it out. So, good news today, Joshua.
What's this?
There's no furniture for you to move.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I just have to say.
My back was just recovering.
From the last.
Cool.
Joshua has been such a gift to me, and I, can't lift all this shit by myself. So every time he comes over, I'm like, hey, would you help me move this giant credenza? And he has just been a god among men. So thank you.
You're welcome. Of course.
Yeah. I thought I'd make you happy. No furniture today.
Yes,
it's awesome. No furniture Monday. But tomorrow, shit's going down. Sure. So speaking of whatever we were talking about, how's your balls? Was it ball related? I don't remember.
Oh boy.
How's your junk?
How's the forest? Here?
Are you a hairless kitty?
Well, not hairless. I'm trimmed.
You're trimmed.
You're
scaped.
I'm scaped.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're definitely scaped.
I am a very scaped man.
So how's it working out for you?
It's great. It's
awesome.
Great. No, I'm keeping myself nice and trimmed and clean and
nice.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate this. But by the way, support for Just the Tip-Sters is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels.
Oh, my God. I love it. I wonder how much fun it is to work there, and be like, let's just come up with all sorts of stuff.
How many different things can we come up with?
I love the nose trimmer and the lawnmower 4.0 because it's like from nose to nuts. They take care of. I mean, I love that. It's incredibly beautiful.
Perfect.
So we have a code.
Well, there's a code to get 20% off and free shipping. Use the code JustTheTip. Which
there's no better podcast for this
is
product.
So perfect.
Yeah.
Just the Tip. Go to manscaped.com and then enter in Just the Tip for 20% off and free shipping.
Yay. So I told Joshua I hope that he wasn't bored shitless by this.
Yeah.
And I will explain. Yeah. Well, I will explain it. I never, ever wanted to talk about this case. And it actually is the Zodiac.
Oh, it really is a Zodiac. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
I'm smooth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone and their brother talks about the Zodiac.
Sure. And this is one of the few that I actually know a little bit about.
Oh, this is magnificent.
I don't know a lot, and I'm excited.
Well, I feel like everyone has an opinion, and I don't care about mine. I didn't care about it. It was exciting a few years ago when those cipher breakers broke his code. Okay. And it was like the most boring, narcissistic letter written to the police or whatever. It's just so like heavy and layered and ridiculous. What I do care about are the victims, and we don't know for sure. This is pretty explosive and amazing, and it will be out in the October issue of Los Angeles Magazine. And I was so enthralled with this journalist who is covering another journalist and the daughter of someone who he believes is the Zodiac.
Oh, wow.
And she is like 68 years old now, and she filed a lawsuit against the journalist, and then she dropped it, and she says, I don't want to believe this, but I think you're right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
About her own
father. And you'll see there's a lot.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Okay.
So this article made me resubscribe to Los Angeles Magazine, which I haven't subscribed to a magazine in many years. It's so well done. And I don't even think that Los Angeles Magazine gets the credit it deserves. A journalist spent 4 years on a case we covered earlier this year about a missing LA sheriff's deputy, and she did a phenomenal job. And, of course, my favorite story about Los Angeles Magazine is Michelle McNamara, who wrote the story about the I-5 freeway killer who she redubbed the Golden State Killer. And that became her book.
Oh, wow.
She was given 2,000 words to write an article, and she said, it's 10,000. I can't edit it. And they said, okay.
And they published the full story?
Yep.
Okay.
And then she took that as the basis and wrote, I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Wow. Okay.
So Los Angeles Magazine has a real special place in my heart. But I was reading this and I'm like, son of a bitch, they did it again. And they obviously publish like what they call stringers, like different journalists who do different things.
Okay.
This journalist, Aaron Gell is a writer and editor living in upstate New York, and he recently served as executive producer on the film Breaking, and it's based on his 2018 Task and Purpose feature article in LA Magazine.
Oh, wow.
So,
cool.
Yeah. And the journalist that Aaron Gell is following is named Jarret Kobek.
Okay.
And he is an interesting man, too. He wrote a book called, I Hate the Internet. Came out like 2016. It was pretty popular.
Okay.
And then he ended up developing his own publishing house to publish his own stuff.
Oh.
And other
intense.
people. But
okay.
he lives here locally. He lives in like Silver Lake, I think, Los Angeles. And during the pandemic, like a lot of us, he's kind of, sequestered.
Sure.
So he is like, you know what? I'm going to kind of look into the Zodiac. I'm just going to, and he sits down one day and he's like, I don't know about there. As you probably know, there's been a list of suspects for decades.
Since the murders.
Yeah, 1968. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So there have been people who point one way or the other. And because of his, mysterious, all the weird mystery around it, people think it's, everyone thinks it's their neighbor, their husband, their brother,
Sure.
This is actually pretty good. In my mind, there's a lot. And he writes this so beautifully, it builds. So you're gonna see why I find this compelling.
Excellent. Okay.
More than compelling.
I'm excited.
Good
tease.
Thank you. So Jarret Kobek wrote a book called How to Find the Zodiac, and he had pointed toward a man named Paul Alfred, and I'm going to say the way I grew up hearing the name. It's a German name, but it's like Doer, but it's Doerr.
Okay.
And I've heard several different ways to pronounce it, but I grew up with Lynn Doerr.
Doer, okay.
And she pronounced it Doer, like sure,
okay.
But a little more elongated. It's 2 R's. It's Doerr. And surprise, surprise, Paul Doerr and his family lived in Vallejo.
Oh, okay.
Where a lot of the bad things happened. And Jarret Kobek has a really good explanation as to why it happened the way it happened. And if you remember, there's the taxi cab driver, Paul Stein, who they couldn't figure out why he was shot. It's all subjective here. It's an opinion, but in my mind, it's a really good one. And there's a few amazing people who back it up.
Perfect.
So he writes this book and he is on a podcast talking about his book. And
this is Jarret Kobek.
Mm-hmm.
What was his timing on writing that book?
I think it came out in 2021.
Okay.
And he was on a podcast.
Previously.
Yes, earlier this year in 2022. And Paul's daughter, Gloria, I think I said she was 68. She's 70. And she is notified of the podcast where he says, this is my book and I think I know who did it. And her friends who are attorneys are like, you can file a suit against him. And she actually did. She actually started a lawsuit against him.
Like a defamation kind of suit?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And she was like, if he had just picked up the phone to call me, I would have told him it wasn't my dad. Now you're going to hear that she does a 180.
Uh-oh.
By the end of the information that is disseminated to her.
Okay.
She was so angry that she wouldn't even pay $17.95 for the book. So a friend of hers bought her a copy of the book. She was like, I don't want to support this. So she'd filed a libel suit against him. And in his book, there's only one suspect, and that's Paul Doerr. And he is like, here is the reason why. There's, I didn't even know this, that at one point, Ted Kaczynski The Unabomber was considered a suspect to be the
Oh,
Zodiac.
wow. Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I did not know this, but apparently on the FBI's list, a former school teacher, a house painter, a theater operator, a sports car dealer, and Ted Kaczynski.
Wow.
I think there are so many people pointing fingers all over the place that he said, there's 50 to 100 suspects named every year.
Holy wow.
Yeah. So there is a website called Zodiac Ciphers, and it's spelled Ciphers, which will be important later. And he's been following the case for like a decade. And he said, there's this national task force of seasoned investigators called the Case Breakers, and they pointed toward a new Zodiac suspect, and their theory was quickly debunked, but not before, Fox News is like, oh, this is definitely the Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, at the end of last year, the code breakers who broke his code, which was the most boring letter. And he went to so much trouble. Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things about what the Zodiac did is he, would shoot them dressed in these like odd outfits. And then mostly he would shoot them, but he would tie them up and then he'd use a knife. And if you remember, he started with young couples around Vallejo.
Okay. So
he's severely injured too, but in today's world, his body count is kind of, modest, and I know, but what he was mostly known for is these, weird ass letters he would send to newspapers and to the police, in this fucking weird code. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Weird code, these mysterious ciphers, and he always signed it with, like the crosshairs logo, like a circle with
with 2 lines.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's hilarious that the author or the journalist from Los Angeles Magazine says, people have compared him to Hannibal Lecter and the Riddler. And it's like, no, he's basically some wonk on like 4chan or something. He's like just I know, kind of making him, feel bad, but still if it's him, it fits really well. And he is an oddball. It's pretty funny that like maybe a year after his first letter, a married couple, it was 1969. So it was a year after he started, a married couple sitting in Northern California at the breakfast table decoded his first cipher.
Wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't that hard to break. And here it took 50 years later. Yeah, I know.
Huh.
I know.
Okay.
Totally weird. I don't know if you remember the David Fincher film.
Which one is that? Who that was?
David Fincher, the director?
No, I know.
I know you know.
Who was? I think
it was Mark Ruffalo.
Was it Mark Ruffalo?
Yeah,
he was the journalist.
Yes.
And yeah. Okay.
I wasn't
didn't see it, but yeah. Okay.
I wasn't very impressed, but there have been a couple of. I think it was the best attempt to cover a very old story. It wasn't like my favorite,
Got it.
Depiction.
Sure.
So here, poor Gloria Dewar is, like, what the hell are you talking about, my dad? And here's 43-year-old Jarret Kobek, like, look, I think it's your dad, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So he really started off wanting to write about all the conspiracy theories about the Zodiac. And then he ended up
making his own conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Wow.
It's like, how all of these actual professionals in law enforcement and armchair detectives have fallen victim to all these theories. And then he starts kind of digging, and it's interesting because you could say he's a conspiracy theorist like everyone else, but I'm telling you, he won me over. He won me over, and I've never been won over. Okay. I've never wanted to talk about this case. I've never cared. The only part I care about are the victims, and it's going to be too late to get any sort of justice now.
Sure.
But it just, So one of the things that Jarret Kobek thought was fascinating, and he obviously is a very intelligent, well-read man. He's like, he uses these weird, bits of ephemera. Like he called out the Mikado. And then that you and I were actually talking about this, and I got the title wrong, that 1924 short story, The Most Dangerous Game, like hunting humans.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I called it The Game or The Lot. I can remember.
We messed it up.
But it's The Most Dangerous Game. And, this is pretty fascinating. An online person, an anonymous online researcher named Tahoe27 said, you know what? I think he's referencing an obscure 1950s comic book.
Oh.
And Jarret Kobek did the most rudimentary thing, and it put him down a months-long rabbit hole, and I think he's onto something.
Okay.
He basically Googled Paul Dewar fanzines Vallejo.
Oh, wow.
And it was, oh my God. Letters to the editor by Paul Dewar, criticizing the Postal Service.
Oh.
Interesting shit, which would, like kind of Ted Kaczynski kind of thing, suggesting citizens fight back by addressing all of their letters with 1-cent stamps. And this is pretty interesting. Kobek thought of a piece of correspondence he'd heard about in his first Zodiac book, and it was mailed to attorney Melvin Belli and postmarked around the 1968 area, and it was sent with 1-cent stamps.
Huh.
Right. And he's like, that's nothing. That's just a coincidence. So he keeps digging.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So Paul Dewar left a pretty big paper trail. Lots of letters to the editor, lots of classified ads, articles he wrote on his own, like, teaching people how to hunt and all sorts of weird off kilter shit. Some of it is, sounds very angry and dangerous. And Jarret Kobek's like, you know what? Nah, this is too crazy. I don't want to do this. He's not the Zodiac.
Got it. So all of this stuff, this is all published stuff that Paul Dewar was signing himself or taking out these ads by himself.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's really got his name on it.
Yes. He's like, this isn't the guy. This isn't the guy.
Okay.
So he comes across from something, a volume called Hobbitalia. So I guess it's kind of based on the Tolkien.
Like the Hobbit? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And he starts using this author of the letters to the media and to the police, starts using this fictional runic language called Cirth. And that's how he creates his codes and ciphers. And he spells cipher Cypher, the old English way, instead of Cipher. And it just seems like there was wording, Paul Dewar's wording was very similar to how the Zodiac spoke, right? So he's like, okay, well, I'll keep digging.
Okay.
So he keeps digging, and he finds that Paul Dewar is like, expressing an interest in the Society for Creative Anachronism. It's this group that's devoted to medieval cosplay.
Okay.
And he finds a picture of Paul Dewar wearing an executioner's hood.
Oh.
As part of his costume.
Wait, how can you tell that it's him?
I don't know.
Maybe he's got a hood on.
Okay. Maybe he had a shirt that said Paul.
Paul, he's got a hello, my name is.
Hello, my name is Paul.
Right.
So he wore, the Zodiac, if it's Paul Dewar or the Zodiac, wore this executioner's hood on his first attack in 1969. And he attacked 2 college-age picnickers.
Oh, that is something we know about the Zodiac killer, is that he wore that hood?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because a few of them survived.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it was the first one at it's called Lake Berryessa, Berrrasa, in Vallejo. Mm-hmm. It was a place where a lot of kids would go and park and, make out. And he seemed to have like some sort of anger at young people. We'll find out why. Okay. So that was super weird. But he shot a couple in their car, and the male survived.
Wow.
And was able to, that's why we had these weird sketches because a few people survived.
Got it.
Yeah. Super weird. So he's like, Paul Dewar's, this is interesting. He seems like a weirdo, but I don't know. So then he finds where he had written articles in something called Pioneer, where he focused on survivalism. One contained instructions for how to make a bomb with ammonium nitrate and fertilizer, the same formula that the Zodiac had outlined in one letter to the police.
Oh.
Yeah. It's just so interesting. I'm sorry. I just find all of this interesting. So he keeps digging and he's like, I don't know. I don't know. And he keeps digging and he finds some more political content that Paul Dewar wrote. And he was a member of the Minutemen, which was a militant right-wing group. And they published newsletters, and they put the formula for the bomb in their newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah. So he finds, all of this stuff that Paul Dewar is writing, and he just seems like voraciously wanting to get his message out there. And Paul Dewar said, why don't all Americans send threatening letters to the communists, i.e. the FBI? Yeah. So in his research, Jarret Kobek finds a file on the Minutemen, an FBI file, and guess whose name is on the membership list? Paul Dewar.
Nice.
By now he's like, what the fuck's happening? What the fuck is happening here?
Okay.
So, he's like, I'm in denial. I'm in denial here, And then in early 2021, he's like, I'm going to read everything I can about Paul Dewar. So he compiles, this is what I think is so fascinating. He compiled a 19-page document loaded with all of his opinions and caveats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is why it could be him. This is why it may not be. He addressed it to the Major Crimes Division of the San Francisco PD and the FBI. And he waited and no one reached out to him. And he goes, I get it. They get tips every day. They should be skeptical of this, journalist. But while all of this is circumstantial, it really builds a great circumstantial case.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an opportunity to prove it's him or not him with DNA on the back of stamps that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know why that hasn't been tested yet. That's a big question here.
You can get DNA from
Mm-hmm.
licking a stamp.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So this whole circumstantial case is building, and he's like, I thought about calling his daughter. He'd found her, obviously, but he's like, I don't want to bring this up. He also, when he was doing research, found out that Gloria had a criminal history. She had felonies for drug distribution and possession. And he's like, I bet this woman is already going through enough. I don't know that she'd be prepared for me to call and say, hey, by the way, your dad's the Zodiac,
Okay. Yeah.
So I get it. It's one of the things that, when you host a podcast, I always like to start with law enforcement.
Sure.
Because is journalists as great as these still may get something wrong? And
Sure.
I'm very big on please don't get the information wrong, especially about the victims.
Absolutely.
So, I get you don't want to upset someone's apple cart.
Right.
I've covered people's cases, and I have had 3 times, I think, family members email me and say, thank you for keeping my family member's case alive.
Oh.
And I think, I could have called you and talked to you. But I had one person say, you covered my daughter's case beautifully. I'd like to talk to you someday.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel bad that I didn't contact him, but there was so much voluminous information. I just went ahead and did the case.
Okay.
It's not that I don't want to talk to family members. It's that they are problematic and that they could have their own skewed view. Like
Sure.
Gloria Dewar started off by wanting to sue him.
Right.
And the Los Angeles Magazine journalist brokers a detente, and they get together, and it turns out really good.
Oh, wow.
But she wanted to sue him. It's like,
Sure.
how can you say my dad's the Zodiac? Right. How can you write a whole book about it? So his book comes out in February, and it doesn't really sell much. And, Gloria's friends are like, look, here's this book about your dad, and she's like, yeah, I don't want to support this at all. This is ridiculous. So she starts talking to the Los Angeles Magazine journalist, and she says, I've had a very eventful life. I made bad choices. I've had 4 or 5 marriages. Like she doesn't, quite remember.
4 or 5.
Yeah, I know. She sounds like Elizabeth Taylor.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's like, puffing on American Spirit cigarettes. So, yeah. So what's interesting is on the 4th of July, back in 1969, Darlene Farron and Michael McGow are sitting in their car, and a flashlight shines in their eyes, and he raised an automatic pistol and began firing without a word. Michael survived, and he offered the description, which is why we know about the executioner's hood.
Got it.
And, I think I'm trying to remember, it might have been Paul Stein who gave the description of him without the hood when he was in the back of his cab. Maybe I have to find that out. But because, you've seen that picture of the guy with the flat top and the glasses, that's wait do you see some pictures.
You've got pictures of
Jarret Kobek does.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're pretty interesting. So a few weeks after him trying to, kill these 2 kids, the Zodiac starts writing letters, public letters. He claims, responsibility for killing Darlene Farron. And, he claims, he's like, I killed 2 other teenagers too. And they're like, what is happening? So Gloria has now read both of the books that Jarret Kobek has written. And when the journalist suggests they meet, she says, you know what? I'm open.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm open to this. And he meets with her the first day. And the second day, Jarret Kobek arrives and in Vallejo. For now, the lawsuit is off the table. For now.
Okay.
And I think you'll see the progression,
Right.
Aaron Gell.
Los Angeles journalist.
Thank you. He spent 3 months calling Gloria and, having these discussions with her. Like a portrait of Paul Dewar sort of becomes more clear. He's an eccentric outsider, really smart, a wide range of interests. He didn't graduate high school, but he was, kind of a self-taught guy. And, he spent a lot of his free time reading everything, Edgar Rice Burroughs, to ancient Egyptian tomes, to witchcraft, just like consuming everything.
Okay.
So he and his wife apparently lived in a very loveless marriage.
Oh.
And here is poor Gloria, their only child. And she said, I don't remember ever being touched by them.
Ouch.
In a loving way. I mean, you'll find out later her dad did some really terrifying things to her.
No.
Yeah, really terrifying. Back then, I find it really hard to believe, but she said he played Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't even know it was around in the 70s.
It wasn't as popular as
Right.
It wasn't as
I'm sure.
mainstream as it is today, for sure.
Yeah, she said he played Dungeons and Dragons with other fantasy nerds, and he swapped firearms with members of the Hells Angels. She said there were always guns at the house. Pretty interesting. He, kind of spoke out in favor of polygamy, and he told Gloria, I think he said a lot of things that maybe weren't true. He told Gloria that he delivered a lecture on polygamy to a Mensa meeting. But so here he is saying, polygamy is a wonderful thing, and yet is in this terrible, loveless marriage. They slept in separate bedrooms. Her mom and dad slept in separate bedrooms. She remembers at one point they were having a fight, and her mother said, I did my conjugal duty.
Oh, boy.
Like they had sex one time and they had her or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good times, right?
Oh.
She said he always carried a notebook, which is pretty fascinating, because he wanted to take down all of his notes because he's so special.
Sure.
And a compass, a penknife, a large hunting blade, and 2 loaded pistols, 1 for each pocket.
Wow.
Always carried that with him. I think that's pretty weird.
And that's super weird. I mean, from the portrait that you're painting of him, it doesn't sound out of character, though.
No. And he tutored her in cryptography. He devised a weekly puzzle, and if she got the answer right, he'd give her allowance. but it was somewhere hidden in the house.
Oh, wow.
If she didn't get the puzzle right, she didn't eat lunch.
Oh, no.
He taught her about situational awareness. He said, close your eyes and tell me how many people are in this store right now.
Nice.
Yeah. She said her fondest memories are of their father-daughter hunting expeditions. And Gloria is like a big animal lover, and she couldn't stand to see animals killed. So before he would, shoot a deer or rabbit, she would say, "Daddy, don't!" And like scare them off. Yeah. Her mother, Rose, I don't want to talk much about her. She said, I don't remember them touching each other or even me. Her mom used to call her a whore and say she was psychotic. And then her dad would say, "You're frigid" to his wife in front of Gloria. And she's like, when her mom said, "Well, I did my conjugal duty." She remembers she's too young to know what that means, but she's like, "Am I the conjugal duty?" I know.
Ouch.
Isn't that heartbreaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, she said she thinks they both suffered from severe mental illness and they both had delusions and there were guns everywhere. She said, I remember, bringing friends home from school and say like, don't reach between the couch cushions because there would always be a gun there.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
She did say something I thought was pretty interesting. I think they covered for each other their whole lives.
Huh.
Her dad died in 2007 at the age of 80 of cancer and heart issues. So Paul said that he was, he served in World War II and then in the Korean War. Jarret Kobek found that he didn't leave the U.S. in his military service.
Oh, he was enlisted, but he never.
Yeah. He said, I can't find that he ever went overseas.
Oh, wow.
He said, this is one of my favorite parts, is he told Gloria that he'd been invited to a party where J. Edgar Hoover was wearing a red sequin dress.
Oh, boy.
And he kissed him on the lips and said, thanks for helping the Allies win the war.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. Yeah. It seems like the way he structured what he did was very much like The Most Dangerous Game. Like just like hunting humans.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, wait. Okay. Gloria says, I believe he had PTSD. He would have night sweats and then he would snap and wake up. And I'm telling you, he was somebody else. His eyes would be black. And she said he just was someone else. You couldn't even recognize him. And she said, sometimes my hair would stand up. Like it was such a shock. Yeah. No kidding. This is really terrible. She was a first grader. And this is like one of her big bad memories. Paul threw her up the stairs.
Oh, wow.
It knocked her unconscious and she woke up drooling blood.
Oh, no.
And she went to the dentist office and they had to pull out all of her baby teeth.
Oh, wow.
There was a boat trip where he was annoyed at her for whining and he tossed her overboard and then dragged her along with a rope as she fought for air.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. She came home with a bag full of pears, a gift from the neighbor, and her mother accused her of stealing them. Paul bound her wrists with a rope and suspended her from a tree branch and whipped her savagely with her feet dangling off the ground. And her screams summoned the neighbor who came over and backed up the story. I gave her the pears. And what's so interesting to me is Gloria said he never apologized for that.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's Jarret Kobek, like hearing these stories from Gloria, he's like, I really started to like Paul for this. He had this very violent side, and Gloria said he did. He also had a beautiful side. I'm not sure we ever really see that, but it's an interesting thing that she still, she does say, I love my father.
Sure.
I also think this could be right.
Okay.
When you hear all of these connections. So there were, around the time of the last killing, why are there differing descriptions of him? And one of them said he had red hair.
Oh, okay.
And she said, well, I remember around the time of the last killing, he started using henna in his hair.
Oh, he dyed his hair with
Mm-hmm.
henna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which gives it a burgundy red tint.
Sure.
Yeah. Interesting, huh? So there's these, big pile. Gloria brings a big pile of pictures. And Garrett is like flipping through them. And there's this undated photo of Paul Dewar using a bow and arrow.
Hmm.
And he's dressed in like a buckskin outfit and he has a hunting knife on his hip. And this is so fascinating. He's like, look closely at this picture. There's 2 rivets in the knife handle, and it's a match for the knife that was used at Lake Berryessa.
Oh.
I mean, circumstantial.
Sure.
But interesting.
But it's...
Yeah. So Gloria starts to fill in some pieces. She's like, 1968 was a pretty tumultuous time for my family. She's becoming an adolescent and she was like an A student, but she was still interested in like, the counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
And that made Paul just like a disciplinarian, like out of, he's medieval and things that you don't need to discipline a kid for. But she's an A student. And she got a job in the summer working at an apricot plant. And the people who worked there were like undocumented immigrants and kids underage. Sure. So she's working there and she kept working when school started. And a guy she worked with offered her a white powder that she thought was cocaine. And it was heroin.
Oh.
And she said, I had my little amber bottle and a little spoon and I would take a hit every now and then. And I was such a dummy. The first time I did it, I was vomiting. But I thought, wow, I know this feeling. I'm safe.
Oh.
Isn't that heartbreaking? Isn't that heartbreaking?
Man.
She said, I think anybody that has had severe trauma in their life, they recognize when they get into heroin, it's a safe place to go.
Wow.
Yeah. Heartbreaking. So he found her drugs and he was really violent but she was sick from not doing them.
Right.
And she calls a teacher who whisks her away and she didn't go back to her house.
Okay.
She, had come home one night. She only could go out on Friday nights, which is odd. And she was 10 minutes past her curfew. And her mom starts screaming at her that, you slept with the whole football team. And then Paul, she's like, I wasn't even sexually active. Wow. And Paul beat her and you didn't even have to talk. He just kept beating me and beating me. She said she finally, it was so overwhelming. And he said stuff like, she's on the ground. He's kicking her and punching her. And he says, this is how you hit people so there's no bruises. Yeah. And she said, blood's coming out of my mouth. My mom is screaming, stop. And finally, I come up with the words, Daddy, don't.
Oh my God.
And he dropped her on the sidewalk and walked away. Wow. So she brought back the phrase from when they went hunting.
Yeah.
Isn't that heartbreaking? Yeah, I know. It's kind of terrible. So they're talking about a memory that's, 50 years old. And she talked about, that night. When was that? And she narrows it down to that Friday night was December 20th when they're looking at a 1968 calendar. And Jarret Kobek says, hey, you know what's interesting? Yeah, that's the night that the Zodiac killed his first victims.
Oh my gosh.
The first 3 attacks were on teenagers and teenage hangouts, the places where
they're making out, they're being sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Places that his daughter would hang out.
Huh.
Yeah. So, did he pick that night where he almost killed his daughter to then wear an executioner's hood and try and randomly kill 2 teenagers who are making out? Pretty interesting, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jarret finds some letters to the editor that Paul Dewar wrote in something called The Green Egg. It's a neo-pagan journal.
Okay.
And, he talks about if you wanted to get rid of someone, here's some various physical procedures you could carry out.
Huh.
Yeah. Pretty weird. I think if this is him, which it really sounds like it's him, I think he wanted notoriety. He wanted to be found out, kind of. So what he describes, isn't exactly a murder confession, but Jarret Kobek is like, this is not vague enough to not be something that really happened, And he said, I think he was terrified of losing his daughter to the counterculture and, her growing up and being sexually active and doing drugs. And like, this was his way of, acting out.
That was the trauma response.
I think it's kind of interesting. I really do think it's kind of interesting, right? So at the age of 80, he, died of a heart attack in 2007. He had cancer at the time. And all he left, and he left them all to Gloria, was his collection of firearms. And she was like, I didn't have the heart to tell him I couldn't keep firearms because of my felonies.
Oh.
Because of her drug felonies. So she had them like stored in a woman's garage for a while. And this woman who, how every weird offender has like fans.
Oh boy.
This is
the fangirl.
Fangirl.
Oh no.
Yeah. She is now in her 60s. So back then she had to be pretty young.
She was young. Yeah.
And she refused to be acknowledged by her name in this article. She said, you have to call me by my Renaissance fair name, Mistress Goodheart.
Oh boy.
Yeah. She'll speak to him, but he can only refer to her as Mistress Goodheart. And she is she works for the government, which is interesting. She's, a prize winning crochet artist. And she, says that I know. So she's also a bit of a hoarder.
Yeah.
So she's like, it might be hard to find the guns in my garage. I don't know. And she says, by the way, you're barking up the wrong tree. Paul would never have hurt someone unless they deserved it.
Oh.
So she was his, I don't know if she was his mistress or just his weird ass girlfriend, his side piece or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's like, why didn't he kill his wife? And this is what Mistress Goodheart says, the one that was causing him so much grief and aggravation, spoken like a true fangirl mistress.
Right.
She's like, why wouldn't he have killed Rose? And she actually even says, maybe she just wasn't enough of a challenge. Like maybe she didn't take off running. I'll give you a head start. And she said, if he had done anything like this, he would have told me on his deathbed.
What do you know?
I don't know. I don't know. So, she's trying to defend him in one way, but she ends up kind of laughing and saying things that kind of implicate him. She's like, he loved those survivalist magazines and they really displayed like a lot of violence. And he would, write for some of them and he would explain how to make a shoe in one paragraph and then use 3 pages to explain how to kill somebody. And she's laughing. And she's like, I told him, you're doing it backwards. We need more articles about shoes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So Jarret Kobek is like, I'm going to find that issue.
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking for that. So it's probably going to be hard for them to find the firearms. She says she would try, but I don't know. I don't know if she'll ever actually be able to find it. But there are ways in my mind, and in this journalist's mind that you can find out if it's him or not. I feel like it's easy, and I wish. Yeah, I wish.
But it's possible that one of the firearms that was used in the Zodiac was, oh wow,
he was 70. Look at the creases in the forehead.
Yeah, wow. That's uncanny.
Yeah. So he, in his real life was like, oh, he doesn't wear glasses. And she goes, yes, he does. And she pulls out pictures of him wearing glasses. So the guy who was the number one suspect for a really long time, the guy I thought did it, Arthur Lee Allen, I guess it's proven that he didn't,
Okay.
And there are people who are like, oh, Paul Dewar doesn't look like the Zodiac. I mean, you can, Photoshop sunglasses on him or glasses on him. And it's like,
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like, there's some really good pictures here. And in this Los Angeles Magazine article, you're going to see they're not definitive anything.
No,
but they're interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
I find them fascinating to me. Yeah. So, the guys that broke the cipher, they were like, well, when they read Kobek's book, isn't it our old friend confirmation bias?
Yeah.
So they're like, this isn't him. And Gloria is like, I don't know that I disagree anymore. So there were pictures of him with facial hair, with no facial hair, sketches of him with facial hair, no facial hair, the glasses, not glasses, and she's like, well, he did have facial hair sometimes, and then he was clean shaven other times. He did wear glasses, and she finds all these, pictures of him. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the thing that seals it for me, and it's not a great thing to base your opinion on one person's opinion, but I respect this man so much. So when I mentioned I'll Be Gone in the Dark, Michelle McNamara, mm-hmm. So she had help from Billy Jensen, we won't talk about him, but Paul Haynes, they called him the Kid because he was very young, and he was a researcher for Michelle. Okay. And he and Billy Jensen and Patton Oswalt, her husband, finished the book after she passed away.
Got it.
So it could come out. Because she was,
she was ill, right?
3/4 of the way done.
Okay.
So Paul Haynes says, this presents the most convincing, compelling suspect I've ever seen. The probability of Paul Dewar being the Zodiac is higher than any other individual on the planet. There are so many specific things that overlap. If it's not him, I'm going to be astonished.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's like, why didn't this book get more attention? And, people that are like really into this case were like, if he had released this book 20 years ago, it would have gotten a lot more attention. The problem is there's so many new suspects all the time. They're like, oh, here's another one.
Here's another thing. Yeah. Here's another rabbit hole.
I do think there's things that are going to hopefully be looked at after this article comes out. So Gloria Dewar and Jarret Kobek are looking at a map that he drew where he shows like the Zodiac's, victims, and also some of his scribbles that are very close to her father's handwriting. Okay. And she finally just like sits down and lets out a very long sigh and says, I think you're right.
Wow.
I hate to say this, in my heart of hearts, I want to deny it, but I also want to know the truth, whatever that is.
Wow. Yeah. Intense.
So, yeah. So his last victim, which was Paul, that's right, taxi driver Paul Stein, he left behind some bloody fingerprints, which have never been linked to any of the other suspects, by the way. And the San Francisco Police Department did not respond to numerous requests for any kind of comment on the story. But it would be a simple matter of the Cold Case Division putting Paul Dewar's prints from his military service record and do a comparison.
Okay.
I feel like it's waiting there.
Sure.
It's waiting there to be done. So Gloria says, in a strange way, when people ask what your life is like, you don't know where to start. And this kind of validates it. Because I can't deny the truth in it, I love my father unconditionally, but I do know what he's capable of.
Yeah. Wow.
I just couldn't be more. Yeah, I couldn't be more fascinated by Aaron Gell and Jarret Kobek. I mean, to me, this, when you see the pictures, so here's the one of him younger. There's him using a bow and arrow, and I know it's black and white, you can't see it, but wait till you see the picture of him when he's younger.
This is where he's got a hunting knife that could possibly be one of the hunting knives. Okay.
And here's a picture of him when he's younger, and I just want you to look at the sketch and the younger picture.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, those, like, his lips are right spot on.
The only thing that's a little different is the nose.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at those creases above, like right between the brows.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
wow.
I know it's a dangerous thing.
Sure. I mean, because this could be
pictures side by side.
Right. Confirmation bias and whatever. Like,
Exactly.
I mean, yes, I have.
The chin. Oh, man. I know. I got to stop looking.
For sure. But it's really good circumstantial.
It is. Now you know why I was like, Joshua, can I have a little more time? I need to totally do a little more research. I don't want to. Yeah. I don't know. What do you tipsters think? I would love to know. And you're going to tell me, don't cover the Zodiac anymore, bitch. I prefer to cover cases that maybe don't get enough attention. And this case has gotten a lot of attention.
Totally.
But it's just so well done. This is research that needs to be acknowledged and appreciated.
Yeah.
It's just it's not crappy journalism. It's not, he lines up as many things. It's like, well, it could be this or it could not be this. He doesn't, he puts caveats with everything. But the fact that he made a 19-page dossier to send to the San Francisco PD and the FBI, that's commitment.
Yeah.
That's commitment. Wow. And it's not a crackpot writing,
Sure.
Dear Abby, I think that my dad was,
right.
It's
totally.
I think it's good shit.
No.
I hope you'll take the time to read the article. And honestly, if you can support Los Angeles Magazine in any way, it is a great publication.
That's super cool.
It is a great publication. And they spend, of course it's like restaurants and places to go around Los Angeles, but they spend time with really in-depth articles. It's like Vanity Fair.
Nice.
Or, the New Yorker. It's good journalism, and it's hard to find nowadays.
Right.
So,
definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm super interested to see what happens in the next few weeks after this article is published.
Me too. I hope it generates something.
Yeah.
So what do you tipsters think? You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. And you can find us on any of the social media platforms. Just the Tipsters Facebook page, at JT Tipsters on Instagram, JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter, and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.